Ladies and gentlemen, James Lane here, and in this video we are talking all about Georgia. Sidney Powell came out the other day and said biblical news is going to be dropping this week within the next day or two, Monday or Tuesday, coming out of Georgia, and Brian Kemp better pay attention and better go along with it, that rhino. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to give you something special. I have to give you my best Charlie Daniels impression for this one because, folks, Dominion went down to Georgia. They were looking for an election to steal. The Dems were way behind. Brian Kemp was in a bind. He was looking to make a deal. And folks, I believe that we're going to find out about pay to play this week. We're going to see some officials having to answer for their crimes. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing on this beautiful Sunday? Some of us are in blue states. They're trying to lock us down. Some of us are in red states, living the free life. We are doing everything in our power as Americans, as patriots, as fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, husbands and wives, children, sons and daughters. We are doing everything we can to keep things as normal as possible for our families while fighting the good fight, keeping our mouths open, exercising our First Amendment rights. We have to exercise those rights. Remember, we have to exercise those rights or they will take them away. It's kind of like, the best way I describe it, it's like surgery. I'm sure some of you have had surgery. I've had some knee surgeries, some other surgeries, and they always tell you, you have to go to physical therapy. It's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. They're going to stretch you out. It's going to be excruciating. But if you don't use it, if you don't use that joint, that muscle, whatever you had that surgery on, you just let it heal all tight, it's going to be even worse. If you don't use it, you lose it. So you have to use that. You have to exercise those freedoms. You have to use your rights and speak out. And participating in this, watching these videos, spreading them around, and talking about the things that the mainstream will not speak to you about is fighting the good fight. It's being a responsible digital soldier in this new 1776, this new revolution to restore and maintain our traditional and conservative values in this country. Folks, we are here to talk about Georgia. All right. And according to Sidney Powell, and we all saw it this weekend, Georgia is the first state I'm going to blow up. Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State need to go with it. She's releasing the Kraken. And we have to say, and we have to ask too, why wouldn't he go with it? Isn't he a Republican? He's been surprising us lately in his rhino-like ways. But let's go down this just a little bit. And I love the nuke and the Sidney Powell and sunglasses, by the way. Sidney Powell, folks, I don't know about y'all, but I believe I was born for this moment. And I believe in that, too. I believe she was born for this. And, you know, I will actually be showing you some footage from what she said. But what I want to do is I want to talk about Georgia. I want to go and start showing you some of this evidence of why Mr. Kemp should be going along with that. So we're going to go over here. This is Gateway pundit Jim Hoft. This is from today, the 22nd, 9 a.m. And they're saying confirmed. Georgia was stolen. Tally shows massive Biden vote dumps. Lost votes for Trump. Vote ratios statistically impossible. All right. In 2020, President Trump set a monumental new record by adding over 11 million new votes to his 2016 tally across the United States. He won Ohio and the bellwether, President Trump won bellwether states Florida and Ohio by 5%. And remember, I don't know if you've just heard or not, but as of today, they're claiming, experts are claiming in Ohio that it is no longer a swing state. They are considering it a deep red, blood red Republican state from here forward. He won Georgia by 5% in 2016, and now the media wants you to believe that Georgia went blue under Donald Trump. And do you believe this? Does anybody believe this? I don't believe this, and neither does the math, folks. Look at this right here. Donald Trump, that's where he was. He was up on election day, 50.5% to Joe Biden's 48.3%. If you know anything about elections, that's a dominant lead. And on election day and late into the night, President Trump was leading in Georgia by 100,000 votes. That is a lot of votes, ladies and gentlemen. Then, as we previously reported earlier, after Biden gained a lead following massive vote dumps, the remainder of the votes in the state possessed the same Biden to Trump ratio. This is an impossible occurrence. It does not happen in nature. Everything mathematical that follows mathematical law has to be a naturally occurring thing. It just doesn't, you don't break those laws, and this breaks that law. And ladies and gentlemen, in Georgia, President Trump was up by as much as 57% to Biden's 42%, with 50% of the votes counted. Trump still way ahead. Then Biden was allocated batches of votes for hours, some with negative Trump votes, and then with 89% of the of all the votes in, Biden took the lead. And from that point on, the next 53 batches of votes counted. For every single vote batch, the batches had exactly 50.05 to 49.95% victory margin for Biden, and Trump cementing Biden's lead. Folks, we have mathematical anomalies. This is basically saying that every batch, 53 consecutive batches counted, okay? You have to understand these votes, they come in these just like the mail would come in a batch. It comes in a package with a certain amount in it, and those get counted as individual batches. These batches all had the exact same statistical ratio of victory. The margin of victory was a 50.05 to 49.95. They were trying to get the math right, to get just the right number of votes over for Biden, all right? They said it was a classic drop and roll. Not a single batch in our data set after the lead switch event varied from the margin for all new vote batches. This too is inconceivable and indicates fraud. And it indicates fraud because you have to understand, if you rolled a dice, say 50 times, it wouldn't land on 50 times or 49 times or 48 times. You would have a random assortment. There was no random assortment. It didn't follow any laws of mathematics. It followed something calculated, something planned, something planted by a human, perhaps. So, folks, look at this. This YouTuber, by the way, General Flynn shared this earlier, and we're going to talk more about this in a second here. But this user, Endeez, Endeez, he does this statistical analysis here. It's called Georgia Bombshell Analysis. Georgia Bombshell Analysis. Biden takes minimum 98% of a 23,407 vote total. Guys, this is impossible. And it's a 16-minute video. You can look it up and watch it. I'll give a shout out to this guy. So did General Flynn, like I just said. But folks, look, Georgia has a virtually impossible batch. He did this test on one of the batches. Biden's lead in Georgia is only 12,781 votes, right? This analysis was based on an official time-stamped election night data from Edison Research, which was obtained from the New York Times website. So this is the numbers that were being put out by the news. The numbers we saw go up and down and up and down made no sense, right? This batch of 23,487 votes went at an exact absolute minimum, 97.9779 for Joe Biden. The batch was uploaded at 12:18 a.m. on November 4th. The election results began the evening of November 3rd. Remember that. No votes after November 3rd. That came right in at the crack of midnight, ladies and gentlemen. 12:18, 0000. Folks, this is not a case of updating one candidate at a time. We can see from looking at the surrounding batches that Trump did not receive any corresponding entries. That's impossible. According to official data released by the state of Georgia, the county in which Biden received the highest percentage of total absentee by mail votes was DeKalb County at 86.39%. That makes this batch of votes extremely suspect, even if every single allowance is made, because the highest amount of votes coming in from a county there, that was 86.39. So how are they getting a 97.9? It doesn't add up, ladies and gentlemen. Look, the ballots that comprise this batch should and must be obtained and independently audited. I believe this. All right. He also wrote that 9 witnesses of the recently completed Georgia audit include at least one registered Democrat swore to have seen suspiciously pristine, uncreased mail ballots uniformly and perfectly filled out. Folks, I'm also getting reports from people that listen to my show, and you know, as we've been growing, we've been speaking to a lot more people, and people are finding mail bags of uncreased ballots. I haven't seen them myself, but I'm getting reports. People are telling me. I even had somebody reach out and say they personally found a mail bag with what looked like 500 to 1,000 Trump ballots in it, and they didn't know who to call. I had to give them the information of who to call. I mean, this stuff is real. It is no joke, ladies and gentlemen. And like I said, if you watch this video here from this guy, it really will give you a better sense of the mathematical evidence. I am not a math genius. I am a writing guy. I'm an English guy. I'm a talking guy. I am the guy that can put information from here, put it from here. It sounds really crazy, put it together and transmit it to you in a sandwich that is delicious and tasty and understandable. That's my talent. This guy is the math guy. So if you want to listen to the math, you listen to him. And like I said, General Flynn even shared it. So I trust in the general, and I think you should too. Folks, this isn't the only stuff, though. I really want to kind of take this and look into what's coming in the next few days. You know, we're not in the business of prediction, but at the same time, we can kind of look at the facts and start coming up with ideas of what may be to come. All right. So we've seen some statistical data. We've heard that that Sidney Powell says that she's going to bomb and blow up Georgia first. That should be coming. I've been predicting a slow domino effect over the last couple months that we would be seeing after this legal stuff started happening. And I think it will start in Georgia. But let's go to the horse's mouth. Let's hear Sidney Powell, and let's just let her talk for a second about this election in Georgia, and then we'll talk about it.
Let me ask you about the state of Georgia. Obviously, yesterday, the governor there, he certified the election for Joe Biden. It's about 12,000 votes. And what you see, will Georgia switch?
Yeah, that's a total farce. Georgia's probably going to be the first state I'm going to blow up, and Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State need to go with it because they're in on the Dominion scam with their last-minute purchase or award of a contract to Dominion of $100 million.
I want you to remember that for our conversation after this. They purchased a last-minute purchase, $100 million contract through Brian Kemp into Dominion to put Dominion systems throughout the state of Georgia. All right? I want you to remember that.
The State Bureau of Investigation for Georgia ought to be looking into the financial benefits received by Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State's family about that time. And another benefit Dominion was created to award is what I would call election insurance. That's why Hugo Chavez had it created in the first place. But I also wonder where he got the technology, where it actually came from, because I think it's Hammer and Scorecard from the...
Remember that as well, Hammer and Scorecard. That's CIA, that's Black Ops type stuff. That is election interference. It is real. It is not conspiracy theory. You can look it up. Hammer and Scorecard.
The CIA.
Just to clarify, you're saying that Governor Kemp, who's been a longtime ally of the president, is directly involved because of financial benefit in the conspiracy to defeat the president in Georgia?
We have certainly been told that there is evidence of that, and it would warrant an investigation if anybody were actually going to do an honest investigation.
What more could you tell?
Think about that for a second, too. If anybody will actually do an investigation, where is A.G. Barr? Is he working on something for the president right now, or is he working against the president? Or is he just finding out that he has absolutely no control over the Department of Justice because of how possibly corrupt it is? That's a good question.
Tell us about that alleged conspiracy. Is the governor's involved?
I can't give you any more details than that now, but it would certainly warrant an investigation.
George,
if it had been reported to me as a law enforcement officer, I would be investigating it steadfastly.
I know you say you want to do your arguing in court. You are an attorney. You're not a press secretary, but you all did have a press conference last week. Jordan Sekelo said that there's going to be a filing soon in Georgia that would be explosive. Can you tell us anything? Can you make some news with us here tonight? Tell us anything new that you're going to present in that filing in Georgia.
Well, I can't say that yet, but hopefully this week we will get it ready to file.
Sidney,
it will be biblical.
Biblical.
Ooh, it will be biblical. So that's where that comes from when we keep reading about it's going to be biblical, when we keep hearing about the bombs that are going to be dropped in Georgia. They gave away a couple little hints there. I think the Kraken is slowly wading through the swamp and coming for Brian Kemp, because I think between you and I, and it could be something else, but I think that major allegations of Dominion voter fraud are about to come out in Georgia. And I believe that a couple people are going to be implicated, some government officials, including the Secretary of State, including Governor Brian Kemp. A lot is going around about how Dominion works. If you want to secure your elections, you give them a contract. And with pressure from a lot of these other Democrat entities surrounding, it becomes very easy to fall into a pay-to-play trap. And just like major scandals of the past, different industries not really having to do with this stuff like Enron with corruption there and the insider trading and different things like that. There's totally corruption going on within our government on both sides, mainly the Democrats, but there are Republicans out there. You saw Chris Christie come out. He put a cheeseburger down for 2 seconds today, took off the Sprite, got done with the Sprite there. I know that didn't look like a Sprite, but I did the best I could. Put down his Sprite and looked up at the camera and trashed Trump's team. These people are in the pocket of the Democrat Party. They're in the pocket of the lobbyists, and they receive so much money for this. Just as they all say, follow the money, and you're going to uncover everything. I believe wholeheartedly that this is going to change everything. And like I said, we're going to start seeing that slow domino effect, ladies and gentlemen. Look, when you're talking about our votes being counted in other countries, when you're talking about systems that were created for Hugo Chavez, the dictator of Venezuela, and look at how Venezuela is now. And we know this software was used in Argentina and other places around the world. We know it's used in 30 states in our country. We know that there are special programmings into it so you can drag and drop votes, throw ballots in the recycle bin, just like you would go on your desktop. And, here we could just do a great little analogy here. You'd go right onto your desktop and boom, there's Trump's votes right in the recycle bin. Right in the recycle bin, ladies and gentlemen. So, we really have a lot of evaluating to do. We really, as Americans, have to examine these systems. We really have to see whether it's more viable to go back to a hand of accounting. I know there's a lot of people, but maybe we need carbon paper back in our life. Maybe the technology has led us astray. It has just created too many back doors, too many alleyways, too many problems. Folks, I think that Brian Kemp and others have a lot of praying to do, because I bet you the walls must feel like they're closing in. If I was Brian Kemp, I would be smoking a cigarette somewhere, having a slow sip of whiskey, listening to "Hello Darkness, My Old Friend," Simon and Garfunkel, because things are not looking good in Georgia. So, You know, I started this video and I said Dominion has gone down to Georgia looking for an election to steal. I said that Brian Kemp and the Dems, they were way behind. They were in a bind. They were looking to make a deal. And, you know, that deal that I was talking about, that deal that they made is going to come out, in my opinion, as a pay to play, ladies and gentlemen. You pay into Dominion and Dominion guarantees your election. A lot can go on when the devil's in the house of the rising sun, ladies and gentlemen, but it's a good thing that the exorcism is on the way. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day. Ladies and gentlemen, this is President U.S. Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, unconditional surrender grant. And I propose we get rid of the Grammys, we get rid of the Emmys, and we start the Granties. And the Granties would be given to extraordinary Americans who worked their butt off and came from dregs and came from hardship and failed and learned hard lessons and still overcame their utter animalistic humanity and rose to great heights to do great things for this country. But I digress, because I'm not here to talk to you about the Granties. I'm here to talk to you about coming to Parler from whatever social media you're on. And if you're already on Parler and you're seeing this, that's great too. But I want you to go to our Parler page here for the American Reveille. It's at The James Lane. The James Lane, Lane. The American Reveille. I am James Lane. I'm a veteran. I'm the owner and operator of the American Reveille. And all you got to do is come to Parler, sign up, and follow me. You'll see a little follow thing here. Here, look, we can go to Megyn Kelly's. You see how it says follow right there? You want to follow me on Parler, if this thing will ever go backwards. There we go. And be one of the 7,500 people that love the American Reveille. We are patriotic. We are in your face. We are here for you, for the right. We the people, for the people. And we are fighting the good fight as digital soldiers against the left. The more people that join our cause, the more we can spread the message and we can beat down this evil leftist ideology. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, you're probably watching this on Rumble. And folks, Rumble is going to take down YouTube. It is the rising platform for uncensored voices, including many of your favorite conservative voices, including me, James Lane, here at the American Reveille. So when you're watching this and you're on Rumble, you're going to see right over here this little subscribe button. I need you to hit that button and subscribe to the American Reveille on Rumble. I need you to share this. I need to get the word out, because we are a community and we are right. We are righteous. We are on the right path to victory. The left does not stand a chance, and we will prevail.